Here's a simple trick for adding fake interiors to your Unity games. All we need is a quad and a custom shader that fakes the geometry without adding a single extra vertex. It's a great way to represent any non-playable area without the cost of building it. We need a custom HLSL file, link is in the description. This shader is a tiny ray tracer. For every pixel of the quad, it asks one question. If this quad were a window into a room, which wall would I see through this exact pixel? And it paints that. Every pixel fires a ray starting from its own spot on the opening. Move the camera and ray tilts. That's parallax, the same cue your brain uses to judge depth. The interior setup method builds what I'll call room space. It takes the quad's transform and calculates right, up, and into all room's axes, so rotating the quad rotates the whole room with it. It also measures the opening's real size in the world space, so scaling the quad gives you a bigger or smaller window into the same room. The first function, called interior corridor underscore float, can generate a fake room and paints whichever wall each ray hits first. Add a texture and some lighting to separate the walls and fade it with distance to sell the depth. The second function generates a fake tube. The quad is a rectangle, but the mouth of a tube is a circle, so the corners need to be trimmed. For that, we have one extra output called mask that tells us which pixels should be clipped, and alpha clipping throws them away. You can download this file for free from my Patreon, link is in the description. For more Unity shader breakdowns, subscribe to the channel. When you have the HLSL file in your project, we need a new unlit shader graph, and let's call it interior corridor shader graph. We need a few parameters. Vector3, room size, and float, room offset y, will be useful when adjusting the look of the fake box room. For the tube, room size needs to be adjusted together with the scale of the quad. We also need texture2D vertex as texture and float tiling for scaling this texture. Vector3, light there, for fake lighting, and bool, use main light to use the main light direction instead. Float shade min, color fog color, and float fog density to either fake depth for entrances or a glow for exits. We will assign values to those later. In the graph settings, make sure to check alpha clipping, which is important for fake tubes later, and uncheck cast shadow since it might give away our quad. To use our HLSL file, press spacebar and add a custom function. In the node settings, set source as our HLSL file. Next, we need the name of the function. For fake box room, we take the interior corridor string without underscore float, and we would use the interior pipe string for a fake tube. I will start with the fake box, so type interior corridor as the name. Next, just copy the inputs and outputs. Feel free to pause the video if you are following along. Now we wire up the inputs. Press spacebar to add view direction node, set it to be in world space and connect it to view dir ws. Add the UV node the same way and connect it as UV input. Drag the room size parameter and connect it with room size input. Do the same with room offset y. To test if it works correctly, temporarily drag the room rs, so room space, and use multiply. Add a float node and set it to 0.5 and connect it with the multiply node. Next, drag the multiply output to a new add node and again use the same 0.5 value as the second input. Finally, drag the add output to the base color and save. In Unity, right-click on the shader graph and generate the material. In the inspector, copy my room size and room offset y values for this test. In the scene view, add a quad and assign our new material to it. you should already see the fake room. Each wall gets its own flat color, and the edges move as we orbit our camera around. That's the whole effect. Everything else from now is just making it look good. Back in the shader graph, feel free to delete the debug nodes. First, we will multiply the tiling parameter with hit UV custom function output and pass it as sample texture to the UV input. We will use wall text parameter as texture input to see the texture instead of flat colors. Be sure to set your texture to repeat mode for this effect to work. To add lighting, we take normal RS, so room space, and pass it to dot product. Next, we use light dir, normalize it, and pass it as the other dot product input. Now we will have a branch node, and use main light will be the predicate, and the dot product result goes to the false input. The manual light direction is in room space, so the lighting stays put even when you rotate the quad. But we may also want to use the scene light. To use the scene light, we drag normal WS, so in world space, to the dot product A input, and as B, we use spacebar to add main light direction and connect its output. Now we drag the result as true input of the branch node. Lastly, we pass it to remap node input with in, min, max as -1 and 1, and vector 2 with shade min as x and 1 as y as out, min, and max. Remap node outputs brightness, and the lowest it can go is shade min. To apply lighting to texture, we multiply sample texture to the output by the remap result and pass it to a lerp node as A. This is how far each ray traveled, so we multiply it by fog density, clamp it with saturate, and use that to blend the texture towards fog color in the lerp, then straight into base color. The further the wall, the foggier, which is what makes the box read as deep instead of painted. Be sure to save your graph. Back in Unity, in the inspector of the material, you can adjust the tiling, copy my light dir, and other parameters. In the scene view, you should already see your textured fake corridor. Feel free to play around with the material parameters to adjust the effect. One thing that matters more than any shader parameter: push the quad back into the wall and let the geometry around it hide the edges. This makes the effect look much more believable. To create fake tube effect, we can select the interior corridor graph and use Ctrl-D to duplicate it and call it interior pipe shader graph. Open it and select the custom function node. Change the name in the node settings to interior pipe, the same as the name in the HLSL file. Do note the additional float mask output. We need to add it at the end of the outputs list in our custom node. Next, connect mask to the alpha input of the fragment and save. It is visible because we enabled alpha clipping in the graph settings. Just create a material out of the new shader. Next, adjust the parameters and assign the texture. Apply it to a new quad, and you should see a fake tube interior in your scene. Better yet, hide it in some geometry. And that's how you can fake geometry using a quad and a bit of shader magic. Thanks for watching!